A very beautiful morning to you and welcome to another fresh edition of the Daily Brief on Big Hearts 92.1 FM Asaba. I am Marvelous Akbe, and this morning I'll be bringing you the biggest stories making the headlines on national newspapers across Nigeria, and then we'll get to talk about just a little about what they mean. And today's review will get reports from The Punch, we'll get reports from The Nation, The Guardian, Vanguard newspapers this morning. So let's get starting. Let's just head straight to the first paper for review this morning. We'll be starting with The Punch newspaper that has the headline: Federal Government Budgets 1 trillion naira for empowerment SUVs amid rising borrowing pressure. Federal government budgets 1 trillion naira for empowerment and SUVs amid rising borrowing pressure. And underneath that, we have allocation exceeds combined budgets of 7 key federal ministries. Allocation records combined budget of 7 key federal ministries, and then only 70 of 2,579 empowerment projects have identified location. And then also we have economists question spending priorities, demand accountability. You can find that story on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. And then also we have opposition splits over single candidate to challenge Tinubu. Opposition splits over a single candidate to challenge Tinubu, and that's on page 32 of the Punch newspaper. And still on the Punch, we have APC drafts Omi Sore into 276 member Osun Government Campaign Council. That's Osun Governorship Campaign Council. Okay, APC drafts Omi Sore into 276 member Osun Governorship Campaign Council. That's on page 32. We have federal government raises varsity workers hazard allowance to 486,000. Federal government raises varsity workers hazard allowance to 486,000, and you can find that on page 8. Yes, that's on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. And still on the Punch, we have fake agency scandal. Fake agency scandal. Reps grill accountant general today. Fake agency scandal. Reps grill accountant general today. Hoodlums invade Osun INEC office. Cut away PVCs. Hoodlums invade Osun INEC office. Cut away PVCs. Wow, that's on the Punch newspaper. You can find that story on page 30. Also, Obasanjo's role in Obi Kwankwaso ticket sparks row. Obasanjo's role in Obi Kwankwaso ticket sparks row. And we can find that story also on the Punch newspaper. All right, moving on now to The Nation. We have governorship. APC uploads Sharafadin Danladi, 25 others. Governorship. APC uploads Sharafadin Danladi and 25 others. And underneath that headline, we have Galadima Abubakar Adamawa Bauchi candidates. Hamzat Yayi also listed. And then we have Obi says, I am itinerant because parties lack ideology. I am itinerant because parties lack ideology. All right, that's a feature there on the Nation newspaper. We also have on the Nation: Senate House to harmonize decisions on state police bill. Senate House to harmonize decisions on state police bill. You can find that on the news page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Strengthen SWF framework, IMF tells federal government. Strengthen SWF framework, IMF tells federal government. And we also have here, First Lady urges sustained support for Nigeria's healthcare. First Lady urges sustained support for Nigeria's health care. Okay, that's on page 6. Nigeria AFDB partner on regional plan for Africa's mineral export. Nigeria and the African Development Bank partner on regional plan for Africa's mineral export. That's on page 37 of the Nation newspaper. And still on the Nation, we have Benue probes Mpox case. Benue probes monkeypox case, and that's on page 6. And then we have also Owerri, our rescue miraculous, says principal. Rescue miraculous, says principal, and that's on page 45 of the Nation newspaper. And now moving on to the Guardian, we have overlapping budgets, how weak budgeting culture aids graft, poverty and ghost allocations. Overlapping budgets, how weak budgeting culture aids graft, poverty, ghost allocations. And that's on page 6. Yes, that's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. We also have on the Guardian, electricity subsidy hits 1.78 trillion naira as gas debt nears 1 trillion naira. Electricity subsidy hits 1.78 trillion naira as gas debt nears 1 trillion naira. That's on page 3 of the Guardian. That also says Oye 6 CBN intervention says Nigerians paying over 300% interest. Oye 6 Central Bank of Nigeria's intervention says Nigerians are paying over 300% interest on digital loan apps, and that's on the news page 3. And that's quite interesting because this morning I just saw on the internet where a lady was lamenting that she borrowed 1.2 million naira to buy a phone and a wig while she was in 100 level, and she deleted the loan app. So she recently reinstalled the loan app to see that her loan had accumulated over the years to over 9 million naira. And it was interesting because the reason for the loan was just, outrageous to me. A phone and hair, wig. And then she deleted the app and then downloaded the app, expecting that probably the loan company would have forgotten and then her loan would have magically disappeared. But that's what we're talking about this morning, as Oye seeking the CBN intervention, saying that Nigerians are paying over 300% interest on digital loan apps. Over 300%. And then we have Budget Office explains PFIPC's appropriation as BMO denies Buhari link to scandal. Budget Office explains PFIPC's appropriation as BMO denies Buhari link to scandal. All right, we have Osun 2026 Accord Party raises alarm over arrest and persecution. Osun 2026 Accord Party raises alarm over arrest and persecution. You can find that on the news page 7. And then also CPPE dismisses impact of US 12.5% tariff on Nigeria. CPPE dismisses impact of US 12.5% tariff on Nigeria. We have voter registration closes amid concerns over access and election credibility. Voter registration closes amid concerns over access and election credibility. And military rescues 48 abductees in Zamfara as ISWAP finance chief surrenders in Borno. That's on page 9. And then we have gunmen abduct Kebbi High Court judge, kill 3 in Benue. So I was just about to say a good report there, and then there's also another bad report, and then there's also a bad report just side by side. Olodo uprising, Sanwo-Olu urges youth not to glorify ignorance and independence. Talking about Olodo uprising, there's been so much about it on the internet lately about how now people appreciate so many other things, but definitely not intelligence, definitely not intellect and all of that, and that's affecting our youth because there's just so much you find on the internet that makes you realize how mediocre people are becoming. The discussions that we are interested in lately, they kind of, when you ask someone a question, the response you get from them, we glorify some of all of these mediocrities, and that's all they've been tagging Olodo Uprising. You should look that up. It's really interesting. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at the Vanguard newspaper that we have here, and we have 2027 polls. 2027 polls, Obi Kwankwaso's ticket, best chance of winning. That's coming from Babachir Lawal. 2027 polls, Obi Kwankwaso's ticket, best chance of winning. Ex-Secretary General of the Federation, not worth dignifying with response. That's coming from the APC. And then Tinubu lacks capacity to lead Nigeria. That's coming from Peter Obi. And we have promises to unite and secure Nigeria. That's also from Peter Obi. All right, you can find that on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. And then also on the Vanguard, we have hardship, low awareness, threaten PPP. 92% of accounts dormant. And then also court orders army to reinstate and pay 70 soldiers. Court orders army to reinstate and pay 70 soldiers. And we have soldiers should earn 250,000 naira monthly. That's coming from ex-defense spokesman. Soldiers should earn 250,000 naira monthly. 2027 presidency, why we adopted Tinubu, Adeleke Accord party leaders are explaining why they've adopted Tinubu for the 2027 presidency. All right, and still on the Vanguard, we have US warns Nigerians with dual citizenship against traveling on foreign passport. US warns Nigerians with dual citizenship against traveling on foreign passport. Atiku faults Tinubu's borrowing spree amid 7.78 trillion naira oil windfall. Atiku faults Tinubu's borrowing spree amid 7.98 trillion naira windfall. Terrorist abduct Kebbi High Court judge. And that's on page 6 of the Vanguard newspaper. Well, those were some interesting headlines. We had this morning Punch leading with the headline that says federal government budgets 1 trillion naira for empowerment SUVs amid rising borrowing pressure. And there's been concerns over the federal government's decision to earmark about 1 trillion naira for empowerment programs and the purchase of sport utility vehicles. That's what Nigerians call Jeep. So the newspaper reports that critics are requesting the government's spending priorities, particularly when Nigeria continues to borrow heavily and many sectors such as education, healthcare and agriculture are still requiring funds. And then another concern is that only a fraction of the listed empowerment projects reportedly has clearly identified locations that they target. And then so for most of them, it's not been identified. So many persons will just tell you that at the end of the day, these empowerment projects will just be going to family, friends of the politicians, people whom they know, or people who they feel that would directly impact their campaign, not really for the common man. All right, and then also citizens would require transparency in a time like this, especially when a large amount of money, large amount of public funds are involved. We would require transparency. Tell us exactly what it's all about. We want assurance as Nigerians. We want that every naira borrowed or spent delivers its real value. We understand where it's going to, whom it's profiting, and that's definitely not too much to ask, if you ask me. And then we have another story, how weak budgeting culture aids corruption, ghost allocations, and poverty. That one was on The Guardian. And according to the paper, it's talking about overlapping budgets, weak monitoring systems, and poor transparency, which is somehow related to what we just talked about. And the paper says that the report is warning that poor budgeting affects infrastructure development and ultimately this tends to worsen poverty. At this time when Nigerians are already almost living below poverty line, we still have several borrowings. When we talk about the budget and we hear large amounts of money, at the end of the day we don't get clearly how it's spent, what ministry this goes to, or whatever ministry goes to. They do not transparently tell us that, okay, this is how it was spent and all of that. We require that kind of transparency in Nigeria. All right, and then also we talked about the Obi Kwankwaso ticket, which was on the Vanguard newspaper. So Vanguard reports the comments by former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal, suggesting that a joint ticket involving Peter Obi and Kwankwaso could present a strong challenge in the 2027 elections. And it also includes responses from the APC and comments from other political stakeholders, with the APC saying that the ex-SGF is not worth dignifying with a response. So I mean, I no could just answer, you just did talk. That's the APC's part. And then Peter Obi also went on to say that Tinubu lacks capacity to lead Nigeria, and then he promises to unite and secure Nigeria. So Babachir Lawal feels that Obi Kwankwaso's ticket stands the best chance of unseating Tinubu come 2027. But what do you think? Do you think there is even any hope of that? Do you wish that they get unseated, or do you wish that the administration just runs their remaining 4-year term and then after that someone else can take over? Well, we would always love to hear from you, but not right now. But don't worry, you can always leave your comments on any of our social media handles. We're on Facebook, Big Heart FM Asaba; on X, that's Twitter, Big Heart FM Asaba; on Instagram we have Big Heart 92.1 FM Asaba; on Thread it's Big Heart 92.1 FM Asaba; and on TikTok it's Big Heart 92.1 FM. I hope you've had a good time on the show this morning, because I have had so myself. And it's Monday. I hope you have a really productive Monday. Okay, so after looking at all the papers today, it's just a reminder that leadership is measured not simply by promises or by spending. It's about results. We need to see results. We're tired of hearing campaign promises. It's the same thing we hear over and over again. It's time for us to begin to see results. Politics should begin to offer solutions. I think every child, even a child born today in Nigeria, understands Nigeria's problems already. We are tired of hearing people say these are the problems. These are the problems. We need working solutions. We need the country to get out of the present state into a better situation. All right, and that brings us to the end of today's newspaper review. Thank you for making the Daily Brave part of your Monday morning routine. So you can join me again tomorrow at 8 o'clock as we analyze the headlines on the papers again. And if you missed today's edition, if you're just tuning in, you can always catch us on YouTube. Yes, you can watch the full show on YouTube. It's Big Heart 92.1 FM. And then we also post clips on all our social media platforms.